You're scrolling through endless options because you need a piece of equipment that actually shows up on the floor, does the job without a steep learning curve, and doesn't eat up your budget before you've even lifted the first pallet. The hesitation is real. Spend a few hundred on a cheap hand pallet jack and you'll be fighting it every time you try to stack higher, or drop a few grand on a massive forklift that you'll only use once a week and then wonder why it's just gathering dust. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. Let's talk about why the Vestil Pramac forkover electric stacker might be the sweet spot between those two extremes, and when it's better to keep looking. When I started digging into electric stackers, the first thing I noticed was how many of them promise four-wheel drive or high lift height, but then hide the real trade-offs in fine print. A lot of the models I compared end up being either too bulky for a tight aisle or too underpowered to lift a standard 48-inch pallet safely. The forkover design that Vestil uses flips that script a little. Instead of the forks being out in front of the drive wheels, they sit right over them, which gives you a lower center of gravity and a more stable load as you raise it. That's the kind of engineering you notice the second you're pulling a pallet up to a second-level shelf and the unit doesn't wobble like a shopping cart on a curb. It's not a marketing gimmick. It's a practical benefit you feel the moment the forklift-like chassis starts to lift. Who should actually consider this stacker? If you run a small to mid-size warehouse, a distribution center that moves dozens of pallets per shift, or even a busy workshop that needs to keep inventory on racks rather than on the floor, the Pramac fits nicely. It's built for environments where you're lifting and stacking day in and day out, and where you need that extra stability to keep your operators confident. On the flip side, if you only need to move a pallet or two a week, or if you're looking for a machine to take you out onto a rough concrete lot, you'll likely be better off with a different solution. The electric stacker is designed for indoor, relatively level surfaces. Uneven outdoor terrain will chew up the battery faster and can compromise that forkover stability. The practical strengths become clearer when you picture a real workday. Imagine a shipping dock where the receiving crew is unloading a truck every 2 hours. The Pramac's compact footprint lets it weave through aisles that are just wide enough for a standard pallet. Because the forks sit over the drive wheels, the operator doesn't have to fight the machine's tendency to tip backward when the load is fully raised, a common annoyance with front fork designs. The controls are typically a single lever for lift and lower, plus a steering wheel that feels more like a car than a clunky industrial lever system. That means new operators can get up to speed in a half-day of training instead of a week of constant supervision. Battery life is another everyday consideration. While I don't have exact amp-hour numbers to quote, the Pramac line is known for using sealed lead-acid or lithium-ion packs that can handle an 8-hour shift with moderate usage. In practice, that translates to moving roughly 20-30 pallets per charge in a typical warehouse layout, which aligns with what many small operations need. When the battery does dip, you can swap it out for a fresh pack if you keep a spare on hand. No need to wait for a wall charger to finish its cycle. Now, the weaknesses are just as important to acknowledge because they're the reasons you might walk away. First, the lift height on most forkover stackers caps out around 1,012 feet. If your racking system runs higher than that, you'll need a taller model or a separate lift. Second, the unit's weight, while helpful for stability, makes it a bit of a hassle to transport without power. If you need to move it between floors or store it in a tight closet, you'll have to rely on the battery to roll it, which can be slow on a flat surface. Third, like most electric equipment, the Pramac isn't built for rough outdoor conditions. Rain, snow, or gravel can shorten the lifespan of the motor and the battery connectors. Finally, the upfront cost sits higher than a manual pallet jack, so you have to be sure the increased throughput actually justifies the expense in your operation. A concrete example helps put those points into perspective. At a regional parts distributor I spoke with, the manager swapped out 2 manual pallet jacks for a pair of Pramac stackers. Their average pick rate climbed from 40 to 58 pallets per hour because the electric lift eliminated the pause between each lift and lower cycle. The operators also reported fewer backstrain incidents, since they no longer had to manually crank the jacks. On the downside, the manager noted that the stackers